Today we're going to do an advanced lesson on British versus American vocabulary for food. We're going to go through some words and some different ways that British people say it and Americans say it, and some fun facts as well, a little cultural insight into Britain and America. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Jen.
From English Perfectus. We should point out that when we say American, that can also mean Canadians as well. So America and Canada are often very similar in how we say things. And then, of course, in the UK or Britain, there are quite a few different countries. So there are a lot of variations over there as well.
So what would you call this? Is it a napkin or a serviette?
If you said napkin, that's the American way of saying it. If you said serviette, that is the British way of saying it.
More and more people are actually using paper towels instead of napkins. In fact, America actually uses more paper towels than any other country in the world.
Do you say takeaway or takeout?
If you said takeaway, then you're using British English. If you said takeout, then you're using American English.
The most common forms of takeaway in Britain are Chinese food, followed by Indian food and fish and chips. And in the US, the most common takeout is pizza.
I know we order a lot of pizza.
Sure do. If you're interested in advancing your English through one-on-one live English coaching, head to our website, englishperfectus.com, and see our options to help you.
Go ahead and head on over there.
We'll leave a link in the description for this video as well.
Would you call this club soda or soda water?
If you said club soda, that's the American way of saying it. If you said soda water, that is the British way of saying it. Do you call this a toasty or a grilled cheese?
If you said toasty, then that's the British way of saying it. If you said grilled cheese, then that's the American way of saying it. I prefer the word toasty myself.
Some people put peppers in them. What's your favorite thing to put on a grilled cheese?
I like to put cheese on the outside of the grilled cheese, so it's not only on the inside, but the outside as well. It's pretty delicious. Do you call this a sandwich roll or bop?
If you said sandwich roll, that's the American version. If you said bop, that's the British version. A bop is a common breakfast roll that they have in Scotland. Do you call these bangers or sausages?
If you said bangers, then you're using British English. If you said sausages, then you're using American English.
What country would you say eats the most sausages out of any country in the world?
I think I would say Germany, because when we had a layover in Germany at the airport, I could smell sausages through the whole airport.
It did smell like sausage.
So I'm thinking it might be Germany.
That's right.
Yes. Would you call these shrimp or prawns?
If you called it shrimp, that's the American way of saying it. If you called it prawns, that's the British way of saying it.
Although there's a difference between shrimp and prawns, in Britain, you'll commonly hear people refer to both as just prawns. Would you call these chips or fries?
If you said chips, that's the British way of saying it. If you said fries, that's the American way of saying it. Of course, the Brits are known for their famous, world famous fish and chips.
They're pretty tasty.
Would you call these chips or crisps?
If you said chips, that's the North American way of saying it. And if you said crisps, that's the British way of saying it. There are some really unique flavors of crisps that they have in Britain that they don't have in America. These flavors include roast beef and mustard, lamb and mint, tangy tomato, mature cheddar, and beef and onion.
Beef and onion. Which of those sounds good to you?
I think out of all of them, the one that I think sounds the most tasty is roast beef and mustard.
And of course, here in Canada, we have a few unique flavors as well. We have all dressed and we have ketchup chips, which are both delicious.
I prefer all dressed myself. It's a little bit of everything in there. Would you call this a jacket potato or baked potato?
If you said jacket potato, that's the British way of saying it. If you said baked potato, that is the American way of saying it.
Baked potatoes in America are usually used as a side dish. In Britain, jacket potatoes are sometimes used as the main. So toppings such as baked beans and cheese will go on that, as well as many others.
Would you call this jello or jelly?
If you said jello, that's the North American way of saying it. And if you said jelly, that's the British way of saying it.
In the US, strawberry is the most popular flavor of jello. Would you call these bell peppers or just peppers?
If you said bell peppers, then you're using the American way of saying it. And if you just said peppers, then you're using the British way of saying it.
Peppers are actually a fruit because they have seeds.
I didn't know that. Would you call these chili peppers or chilies?
If you said chili peppers, that's the American way of saying it. If you said chilies, that's the British way of saying it.
Did you know chilies are actually better for you than oranges?
I didn't know that.
Would you call this a gherkin or a pickle?
If you said gherkin, that's the British way of saying it. If you said pickle, that's the American way of saying it.
Pickle is a word they actually use in Britain too, but they use it more in reference to foods that are pickled, like pickled onions, that sort of thing.
Pickled eggs.
Pickled eggs. Yeah.
And did you know that Shakespeare coined the term in a pickle,
That's interesting.
which means to be in a tricky or difficult to get out of situation?
I didn't know that.
Would you call these scallions or spring onions?
If you said scallions, that's the North American way of saying it. And if you said spring onions, then that's the British way of saying it. Would you call this a courgette or a zucchini?
If you said courgette, that's the British way of saying it. If you said zucchini, that's the American way of saying it. Would you call this an eggplant or an aubergine?
If you said eggplant, then that's the American way of saying it. And if you said aubergine, then that's the British way of saying it. Aubergine just kind of sounds,
Aubergine. It almost sounds French.
yes, yeah. Aubergine kind of flows a little bit or sounds a little bit fancier
It does.
than eggplant. Would you call these haricot beans or navy beans?
If you said haricot beans, that's the American way of saying it. If you said navy beans, that's the British way of saying it.
Baked beans are actually haricot beans baked in tomato sauce. Baked beans are commonly found in English breakfasts.
Would you call these string beans or French beans?
If you said string beans, then you're using British English. If you said French beans, then you're using American English. String beans are actually rich in vitamins A, C, K, folic acid, and fiber. They're also low in calories and fat, so they're pretty good for you. Would you call this romaine lettuce or cos lettuce?
If you said romaine lettuce, that's the American way of saying it. If you said cos lettuce, that is the British way of saying it.
Cos lettuce was thought to be introduced at the island of Kos in Greece.
Would you call this arugula or rocket?
If you said arugula, you're using American English. If you said rocket, then you're using British English. Arugula is known for its strong and peppery taste. Just like our next food, some people love it and some people absolutely hate it.
Would you call this cilantro or coriander?
If you said cilantro, then you're using American English. If you said coriander, then you're using British English.
Some people have what's called an aversion to cilantro, which is a strong dislike of the flavor.
I personally have a strong dislike for this flavor. It tastes bitter to me, and it wrecks any food that it's in.
I always thought it tasted quite fresh.
I think that's all down to genetics.
Ah. Mm.
Would you call this powdered sugar or icing sugar?
If you said powdered sugar, that's the American way of saying it. If you said icing sugar, that's the British way of saying it. There are a number of different types of icing or powdered sugar depending on how coarse or how fine the sugar is. Would you call this a biscuit or a cookie?
If you said biscuit, then you are using British English. If you said cookie, then you're using American English.
What do you think the most popular cookie is in America and the most common biscuit in Britain is?
In America, I think hands down the chocolate chip cookie. It's a classic.
It is.
And in Britain, the most common biscuit, it would have to be something that's commonly eaten during afternoon tea, I think. So I'm not sure.
Good guess. It's the chocolate digestive cookie.
I wouldn't have guessed that one. Would you call this a fairy cake or a cupcake?
If you said fairy cake, that's the British version. If you said cupcake, that's the American version.
Fairy cakes in Britain are actually a little smaller than cupcakes. They get their name because they're so small that fairies can eat them. They don't have as much frosting on them as American cupcakes usually do, but they're pretty similar. I like cupcakes.
Me too. Would you call this candy or sweets?
If you said candy, then you're using the American way of saying it. And if you said sweets, then you're using the British way of saying it.
There are quite a few candies or sweets that are just in the UK and just in the United States. For example, Smarties are different in the UK as opposed to America.
Huh.
And in the UK, they have wine gums, which we also have in Canada, which is one of my personal favorites. They say they're supposed to taste like wine, but I never thought so. I just thought they were delicious.
They also have rock in Britain, and it's commonly found at Brighton Pier. It's a hard candy that people kind of chew on. It's in the shape of a stick, and it's brightly colored. Would you call this candy floss or cotton candy?
If you said candy floss, that's the British version. If you said cotton candy, that's the American version.
The modern way that cotton candy is made was actually invented by a dentist.
Makes sense.
Would you call this a popsicle or an ice lolly?
If you said popsicle, that's the American way of saying it. If you said ice lolly, that's the British way of saying it.
Did you know that the popsicle was actually accidentally invented by an 11-year-old boy in California in the United States?
Neat. Thanks for watching until the end. We hope you found this advanced lesson on British versus American food vocabulary as interesting as we found it. Remember to head on over to our website, englishperfectus.com, if you're interested in live one-on-one English conversation practice.
We can't wait for our next video. We appreciate you watching.
Remember to hit the thumbs up if you've enjoyed this and subscribe to see our future videos on advanced English. Until next time, keep learning.
And we'll talk soon.